How is everybody out there? Welcome to another installment of Realtree's Rut Report. We are in the thick of it this week. You might say we are in the middle of the actual rut, what people often call the rut, but it's not the best time to be in a tree. You want to be in that tree leading up to peak rut, and right now we're in that actual rut where the action starts to slow down. It's called the lockdown phase. And for a lot of deer hunters out there, we're experiencing it. Before we jump in, anybody that's watching, please go ahead and let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. I don't want to dive in until we know for sure that we're good on all fronts. So please let me know in the comments if you can see, if you can hear. With that, obviously the report is brought to you guys by Thiessens. Check out all of their great gear. They have some awesome stuff. They are direct to consumer, so you will have to go to their website to check out their products. They are having a sale right now, and it's going to be coming up. It's going to be lasting a little while. You're not going to see huge markdowns on their gear because they already have their stuff priced affordable. They don't have huge markups on their products like a lot of companies do out there throughout the year. Their stuff is already priced where you can afford it. So you won't see a huge drop off in their prices, but they're thinking about you year round and pricing that stuff to where you can actually buy it even when it's not on sale. So check that stuff out. It's in the link. The link is in the description. Go check out all the stuff they have. This time of year, we're experiencing some pretty cold weather, have been so far. Going to be experiencing some cold weather for the next week or so before it starts to warm up just a tad. So definitely check out the Thiessens V1 Whitetail Heavyweight Series. It's that time of year. Go get you some. All right, we'll see if we can see. Let me see if we can hear. I guess we're good. I don't see anybody saying that. Yep, I believe we're good to go. All right, so we have some pretty awesome stuff tonight. We're going to try to get on both Nick Munt with Bone Collector. He should be on around 7:30. We're also going to try to get on Mike Stroff, who is a Realtree 365 host. Hopefully we can get both of those guys on tonight. Sometimes we have some technical issues that we have to work through. Sometimes there's little glitches, and sometimes we have to postpone people. Eventually we get everybody that we say we're going to have on here. But hopefully we have those two guys on tonight, and we'll be rolling smoothly. All right, just looking at the southeast region at a glance, weather-wise, it's been pretty good for the last week or so. We've experienced really cool, cold, crisp weather. Just brutal stuff at times. It was 6 degrees this morning here in Kentucky, and the deer still moved. They moved well. So it's that time of year where you're going to see pretty good action regardless of the temperature. But I tell you, those cooler days definitely help you see more of that daylight rut activity. They're going to rut regardless, but sometimes whenever you have those cooler, crisper temperatures, you're going to see more of that action. Now, I will say, as I mentioned earlier, we are definitely in that lockdown phase, especially in Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina, even parts of Georgia are in that lockdown phase. A big chunk of the Southeast, even some of the Midwest and Northeast are in that lockdown phase right now, and it's tough. It's been tough hunting for the last few days. I have not seen a mature buck on their feet since probably Saturday, maybe Sunday. I've been out for the last couple of days, and I have not seen a mature buck. A lot of 1.5-year-old bucks, 2.5-year-old bucks. Seeing a lot of doe fawns and buck fawns, button bucks, by themselves. No mamas. That means they're shacked up with daddy somewhere, and that makes for some pretty tough hunting. Unless you're right there in the thick of it, it makes it pretty difficult to fill that buck tag on a big mature buck. So it's been a tough season here on my end, but I'll tell you what, I've been able to, because I haven't filled my tags yet, I've definitely been out in the field much more than I would have been if I had filled my tags. So I'm definitely getting all the intel, and I'm out there quite a bit trying to bring as much information to you guys as possible. With that being said, we're going to have some decent temperatures over the next 7 days, 7 to 8 days. It's not going to be as good as it was in the past week, but we're going to have decent temperatures in the next 7 to 8 days. The highs are going to be anywhere from the high 30s to the low 50s, but our lows are still really good. Still really good low temperatures. You're going to be down in the mid-20s almost every day. I think the highest low for the next week or so is going to be in the low 30s. That's prime. That's not bad at all. For Kentucky, Tennessee, that northern half of the southeast region, you can't ask for much better than that. We've just been extremely blessed the past 7 days. We're still in good shape. It's going to be a good week, especially when we start easing out of this lockdown phase. We're going to be in some prime hunting. Not going to be as good as it was the 5 to 7 days leading up to lockdown, but what you see is a lot of those big mature bucks, whenever you come out of that lockdown phase and the bulk of the does are bred, a lot of those big mature bucks are going to start moving again, where those younger deer aren't going to move as much because they've already wasted and depleted all of their energy and resources and calories that they stocked up during the summer and the fall. So we're going to jump into our state-by-state reports. In Kentucky, as I've already mentioned, we are definitely in the lockdown phase. It's that time of year where most of the does are being bred. November 15th is usually that peak conception date for the northern half of the country as a whole. Kentucky, Tennessee, most of Tennessee, not all, fall within that category. So does Virginia. So does a lot of Arkansas. Parts of South Carolina do. Even parts of North Carolina. There's quite a few states that fall into that. Even parts of Georgia. It's just one of those things where it depends on where you're at. A lot of these southern states like Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, even as far north as South Carolina and North Carolina, depending on where you're at within that specific state, within each specific state, you could rut really early or really late, and it's all localized. And so you just got to be in tune with your specific area. Knowing the history of the areas that you hunt is good. Contact your local biologist too. We're trying to bring as much real-time information as we can to you guys, but there's no better resource than your local authorities. So check in with your state wildlife agency biologist. Check in with conservation organization biologists such as with Whitetails Unlimited and others. Check in with your game processors. Deer processors are a wealth of knowledge because they see whenever the peak in activity occurs, because that's when they have the most deer brought in. So check in with all these local resources. They are going to provide you a ton of information. Moving on to from Kentucky to Tennessee, it's really much the same. I did speak with Rick Taylor, who is in Tennessee. He is with CVA. He said the bucks are cruising right now. Scrapes are staying active. They are not locked down as much in Tennessee yet as they are in Kentucky, but the does are definitely hitting food sources still. Acorns are big. Hunt where the does are right now, and you're likely to catch the buck you are looking for. So Tennessee isn't locked down quite as bad as Kentucky, but especially that southern half of the state ruts a little bit later. So depending on where you're at in Tennessee, if you're in the far north Tennessee, if you're kind of close to that Tennessee-Kentucky line, you could be getting fairly close to lockdown if you're not already. If you're in the southern parts of Tennessee, far east, far west, could be a little bit different. Moving on to Arkansas, it depends on where you're at. The western part of the state, the northern part of the state, you're getting close to that lockdown phase if you haven't entered it just yet. I spoke with Philip Vanderpool. He said the big bucks are aren't showing up on camera at all. They are in lockdown phase. They're in the western and northern Arkansas. Should be breaking loose any day now as they search for their next estrus doe. He said that they have had a huge crop of white oak acorns this year, and the deer aren't hitting, food plots and other things quite as much. He said he's seeing a lot of single fawns, and that tells him that does are basically laid up with the bucks right now during that lockdown phase. He said from this point on, you got to be out there as much as possible. Whenever they break loose, and you never know when that's going to be. It's going to be a little bit staggered from, with each doe. So, you might have, say you got 3 hitless bucks on camera. One of those bucks might be locked down with a doe today. They might all 3 be locked down with a doe today. One might break loose tomorrow morning. The next might break loose tomorrow afternoon. And the third one might break loose the next morning. You just never know when it's going to happen. But it is going to happen at some point, and you got to be out there when it does. Solid information from Mr. Vanderpool, and we thank him for that. Moving on over to North Carolina, I spoke with Jonathan Shaw, who is with NC Wildlife, and he says throughout most of that state, it's all driven by photo periods. So, the rut happens the same time every year. That's what we were talking about a minute ago. Talk to your local authorities, even especially in a state such as North Carolina, where it kind of varies. We talked about rut starting in the coastal counties there in North Carolina back in early October, mid-October for some counties. Now we're kind of shifting. We're kind of in the central part of the state, east to west. That's kind of where it is now as far as the rut goes. You won't see a ton of rut activity in the western third of the state until we get to the tail end of November. It kind of progresses westward from east to west. That's pretty much all we have right now. The hottest counties in North Carolina are the central counties. You look at Stokes, Rockingham, Guilford, Alamance, Orange, Person, Durham. You've got Wake, Franklin, Moore. Those are kind of the hottest counties right now. Some of the other counties that are, should be starting to flare up anytime soon include Montgomery, Stanley, Union, Anniston, Richmond, Sampson, Edgecombe. There's several in there that could be firing up if they haven't already. But that central section of the state right now is where it's happening in North Carolina, according to both recent information and historical rut data. Moving over to South Carolina. South Carolina is starting to slow down just a little bit. Basically, the 95% of the state, with the exception of the coastal counties and the far northwestern counties, the rest of the state, it was really rocking around the first week in November. Still going pretty strong there, but it's really starting to taper off for most counties. There's little pockets where it's going pretty strong still, but for the most part, South Carolina is starting to taper off. Where we're starting to see the action pick up, where it hasn't previously been good or as good, is like a 3-county area up there in the northwestern section of the state. That's where we need to be paying attention to as we move into the middle of November. Sliding over to Georgia, the home front for Realtree Outdoors. We spoke with a couple guys down there, and basically it's happening for, I would say, 70% of the state right now, probably 60 to 70% of the state. Obviously, that southeastern corner has kind of, it's easing into the post-rut now. There's obviously some little, pockets of rut activity still going on down there in the southeastern part of the state. But, when you look at the rest of that area, basically from Floyd, Barton, Cherokee, Forsyth, Hall, Banks, Franklin, Hart, all the way south to Stewart, Webster, Lee, Worth, Tift, Irwin. That whole region, north to south, east to west, is basically right in the prime time of the rut. And we did speak with a few people, or a couple people. I spoke with Roger Culpepper, Realtree's own. He helps manage Realtree Farms. He said the bucks are wide open right now down there in southern Georgia. Not the deep part of southern Georgia, but, south central Georgia. He said things are happening. Things are rocking. He says they're seeing does being bred, and bucks are on their feet at all times of the day. Now's the time to be in the woods anytime you can get a chance. We also spoke with Mike Mayfield, who is a Realtree pro staffer. He's seeing 1.5 to 2.5-year-olds chasing and acting crazy. He said the mature bucks have started to bed up with the hot does. He expects things to crank back up again here in a few days after these first not the first wave, but the biggest wave of estrus does, leave estrus, and after they've been bred. Things should really start to improve again, mature buck activity-wise, after that big percentage of does have exited estrus. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up our Georgia report. We're moving on to Florida. Things are kind of happening around that Winter Haven area now. We say that city a lot, but it's just kind of the focal point for the central part of the Florida peninsula that experiences that traditional November, December rut, whereas the rest of the Florida Peninsula, both north and south of that area, they see it happen in September, October, July, August. It's just an early rut for the southern third of the Florida Peninsula and the northern third of the Florida Peninsula. There's this weird little pocket right there in the middle of the peninsula there that sees a November, December, January rut. And there's different areas in that part of the state that is seeing that start to flare up now. The Panhandle is also starting to see a little bit more activity. Basically the eastern third of the Florida Panhandle, basically you're in your rut right now. Does are being bred, bucks are chasing does. It's time. So if you're in Florida, the hottest action is occurring in the eastern third of the Panhandle and the central portion of the peninsula. That's according to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission resources. They are telling us that information. Moving over to Louisiana, again, things have been happening over there pretty rapidly and consistently, I should say. Down in the southwestern quadrant of Louisiana, basically there's a 15 parish area down in the southwestern corner. Louisiana makes an L. This whole region is pretty much making it happen right now. Some of those areas, rutted back in September, October, but by and large, a lot of that region is seeing pretty good rut activity right now. You're going to see that rut start to creep a little further north. So if the bottom part of the L there in Louisiana, this region over here, the southeastern corner of the state, not going to see a ton of rut activity there until we ease into that first to second week of December. But as we progress toward the second half of November, you're going to see a lot more rut activity up in the northwestern corner of the state. So whereas it's been focused on that southwestern corner, you're going to start seeing that going further north there in Louisiana. Moving over to Mississippi, not a lot happening in Mississippi. Again, it's one of those states where you see a late rut. You see it basically begin up in the northwestern part of the state there in Mississippi sometime around the first to second week of December, and then you don't see it happen down in the southeastern corner of the state, down there around the coast. It doesn't happen until, as late as late January, early February. So it's one of those things where Mississippi as a whole is still in the early season or the pre-rut. If you're up in basically the northwestern half of Mississippi, you're basically in that pre-rut range right now. If you're in the southeastern half of the state, you're still really in that early season phase. So just keep that in mind. You're obviously still focusing on bed to feed patterns. However, you might be seeing a little more rut sign pickup, rubs and scrapes in the northwestern half of the state. To wrap up the Southeast report, we got Alabama happening, and again, no rut activity for Alabama. Doesn't start there until late November, early December, and that's for like a 5-county area and a couple little hot spots. So nothing going on there, same story as Mississippi. With that being said, that wraps up our Southeast report. We're going to be running over to the Northeast region here momentarily, and after we jump off the Northeast region with Josh, we're going to be getting on Nick Munt. He's going to be telling us what's happening in his neck of the woods. Hopefully we'll be seeing him here soon as well. But we're going to go over to Josh Montgomery here momentarily. I'm going to see if we got any major questions, concerns, issues. Tell me if I look ugly. Tell me if you can't hear me. Tell me if you can't see me. I know I look ugly already, so don't answer that one. So I don't think we got any huge questions or concerns. Bill Keith says it's starting to rock in southern Indiana. Jimmy, is the rut on in the upstate in the upstate area of South Carolina? It's been going on there in South Carolina for a while now, Jimmy. They see a peak rut from late October to mid-November. So we're kind of starting to taper off a little bit for most counties there in South Carolina, but some of them are still going strong. So it really just depends on where you're at. Let's see here. See if we got any more questions. Tom, we just talked about South Georgia. Hope you heard our answer there. Steve says lockdown in Wisconsin. Seeing that a lot. See if we got any more questions. I think that pretty much wraps up a lot. We got a lot of them, but we're going to have to burn through it tonight, guys. I apologize. We won't get to everybody's report. We won't be able to call everybody out. We're going to jump over to Josh Montgomery and see what he has to say there in the Northeast.
Can you hear me?
There we go. How you doing,
Good.
Josh?
How you doing?
Doing fine, man. How's your week been?
Been busy. not in the deer woods.
Well, that happens. You know, we got to work too. Everybody thinks we get to hunt for a living, but we don't.
Yeah.
We are. You know, obviously we have jobs too. Slightly different jobs, but we all have jobs, and that does not include sticking deer with broadheads. So,
Unfortunately not.
so how's the activity been up there in the
It's
Northeast?
definitely picked up since last week. Got some great weather here. I think it's in the 20s here tonight, and it's looking like it's going to be pretty cold the next few days. So, but overall the weather's been pretty solid here for the month of November, and the activity's been good, and it's definitely picked up here since over the weekend and early this week from what I've heard. So I'm definitely seeing some good stuff for most everybody.
Yeah, it's been a cold one. I mean, you know, it's been pretty severe, at least severe for this part of the world. You know, we get down to single digits. That's pretty rare for November. I mean, it's getting to that point now where you got to pass gas just to keep your butt warm. But you know, we do what we can.
Yeah, it's definitely colder, and and a lot of, like you said, especially you guys, but up here even it's not as cold, but it's still below average temperatures. I mean, in the 20s. I think today's high was around low 40s. So it's cold, makes it for tough hunting, but keeps the deer moving, so it's a good thing.
Absolutely. What's the rut activity looking like up there?
Definitely seeing overall a lot of chasing, a lot of cruising. Definitely bucks hitting the ground. A lot of guys getting lucky catching those deer cruising. And like I said, it's pretty consistent across the board here. I did hunt. I think it was Saturday afternoon myself here in Maryland, and like I said, the temperatures have been pretty cold, so I hunted in the afternoon over a small bean field I have, and I've probably seen about 20 deer. I didn't see any mature bucks, unfortunately. Seen a couple doe groups, and they were all headed to food there, and the little ones were definitely chasing them around. A lot of chasing there, and then of course a few days later I get calls from the landowner that there's a big one chasing them around the field. So I just happened to miss them there by a day or two. but
It happens.
But they're definitely moving good. So I got reports from upstate New York, multiple counties, bucks moving at all times, mature bucks moving, morning, midday, afternoon, which is good. I spoke with Midwest Whitetail Pro staffer Corey Slater in western Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. He said just about a week ago he was lucky enough to put a tag on a buck, and he was coming to a field which he assumed was checking does, so he was lucky to fill his tag there. And then since then, the mature buck movement has definitely increased, with some friends seeing lots of cruising and chasing over the last several days. And Corey believes that the peak should be just around the corner, and probably expects to be experiencing some lockdown within either now or within days, probably. He did say that, at least in his area, that some farmers have recently cut some cornfields, and with the lower temperatures, it's definitely been a hot spot for deer activity on the cut cornfields there. Let's see here. And then I talked to David Bush out in central New Jersey. He said that it's rocking in his area. Bucks are cruising. Bucks are all over the place, chasing does. Definitely seeing a lot of the movement towards bedding areas and thick cover. Not seeing much on food sources, as bucks are definitely harassing the does and obviously, their second thought is food. Their first thing is the does at this point. So, um, let's see. And then jumping back over to central Pennsylvania, talked to my buddy and fellow Midwest Whitetail Pro staffer, Matt Lewis. He's from Maryland, but his family has some property up there. He spent a few days over the weekend and early into this week. And overall deer movement was good with the lower temperatures. He had bucks cruising and chasing, and he still found a few fresh rubs and scrapes. He did catch a few bucks cruising on their feet while he was in a tree, but just couldn't get one in bow range. He did note that he had a good amount of deer holding up in some pasture fields at nighttime while he was out looking. He doesn't have a lot of ag in his area, so he assumes they were feeding and whatnot. But he did note he's seen a couple of doe groups and not any bucks with them. So overall, it's been good. I expected. I know you were talking about lockdown and whatnot. It's probably similar up here. If people aren't maybe experiencing it now, it could go any day now. You might go out and might not see much movement, but I would say it's important to just do your best to stay on top of where the deer are. Probably thick cover bedding areas and whatnot. Like to use trail cameras that I don't obviously spend every day in the woods, so when I do go in and out, I check my cameras, and if it hasn't been busy or I haven't seen them, then move on to the next spot and see what's going on there. So just try to move and stay on the deer where they're at.
Absolutely. Great point. I've been seeing a lot of fawns by themselves here with no mamas. That means they're with daddies right now. But it seems like it might be just a touch behind up there then. Behind up here.
Yeah.
Not behind for you guys, but behind what we're seeing.
Gotcha.
Because you said you're still seeing quite a bit of chasing activity. Is that correct?
And again, most of these reports are from the weekend into early this week. So, you know how it goes. A few days can make a big difference. One note I did just get to look it up here. I was checking on the PA Game Commission. I guess they did a report. I believe it was back about 10 years or so ago, but it was a span of about 7 years or so. And peak breeding, according to them in Pennsylvania, falls on November 12th to the 18th. And that was about 25% or so. And then with that being said, from the 5th to the 25th, it was over 50% of the breeding occurs at that time. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But I feel like it's
very cool.
It's pretty similar for most of the Northeast around here. So
absolutely. So what's your advice for the deer hunter that's going to be getting out there this weekend? Maybe they've been experiencing some lockdown. What should they do come Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Definitely head for the cover. Get in close to some bedding. Maybe get in between some bedding, some travel areas between bedding. And like I said, I feel like I try to keep track of them as much as you can. If you have trail cameras in certain areas, maybe in funnels or travel areas, food can be tough now. It depends on what's going on, but you never know with it being so cold. A good food source might be hot, but you just try to do your best to keep tracking where are they now kind of deal. And like I said, I try to check cameras while I'm going in and out. If I'm not seeing them, then I move to another spot. It's good to try to have a few different properties spread out, and one could be dead and the next one you move to it could be rocking. But as you said, with the lockdown, sometimes you gotta get right up on them. They may not be moving far. They may be holding up in some bedding, and hopefully you can get close enough to them and camp out on them. Maybe spend all day. You never know.
Absolutely, great point. What are some of the food sources that the does are keying on right now?
Like I heard, the cut corn was definitely a hot one, and like I said, beans. I have a small bean plot which I was hoping would last a little later, but I feel like even since October we've had some pretty cold weather this year, and they were definitely hot on my beans. Like I said, I have a small. It might be 20 or 30 acres I have, and I've probably counted almost 20 deer or so coming, at or around that field. So, it's definitely pretty good with corn and beans right now.
Good deal. Is there anything else you can share with us up there in the Northeast?
It's like you always say at this point is spend as much time as you can in the woods. That's what I'm trying to do. unfortunately only been in about a day or so over the last week and a half. So it's tough, but just get out there, and if you got one day, set all day.
Absolutely. Great, man. I'll tell you what, if there's anything else you share with us, I know you've shared a lot, solid advice, great tips, a lot for our northeastern deer hunters to think about up there. If you don't have anything else, we'll check back in with you next Wednesday, and hopefully we'll have some more good news then.
Definitely. That's about it.
Thanks, man.
Have a good one.
All right, solid information from our man, Mr. Josh Montgomery. He's a Northeast reporter telling us what's happening up there in that neck of the woods. Just great information as always, keeping it real, keeping it honest, telling us what the deer are doing. That's what this is all about. Let's jump into the comments here. We'll probably be swinging over to the Midwest, seeing what Mr. Ridenauer has to say here in just a moment. I am going to just jump into the comments briefly to see if we have any questions or major reports. Let's see here. Philip says, got mature bucks chasing does. The rut's kicking in there in Hickory County, Missouri. Deer are everywhere. Good report from Mr. Smart. Toby says it's going to be 32 in the morning and a high of 48 there in Nebraska. That's solid weather scenario and weather conditions. So it's not that it's as good as it could be, but it's not terrible either. That's pretty good for this time of year for most of the states here, especially the lower part of the Midwest. Let's see here. See if we got any more reports or questions. Kenneth said last weekend was really good there in Wisconsin. He shot a big deer on Friday, had his nose to the ground, following a doe. Yeah, that's solid information there. We saw a whole lot more buck activity, from the end of last week to the basically end of the weekend, and then it really started to taper off here, at least here in Kentucky and some of the other places that I've been touching base with and reporting on. It really started to taper off and really decline as far as mature buck action. Really just took a sharp downhill turn here around Monday, Tuesday. But it should pick back up by the weekend, I think, because once we've passed the that lockdown phase where the bulk of the does are being bred, it really starts to pick back up. And while that 1.5, 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck action might taper off a little bit the second half of October compared to the first half, your mature bucks, 4, 5, 6-year-old bucks, and even some of your 3-year-old bucks will really carry that good action, good movement through the end of November, especially if you've not overpressured your properties. Bridget says they're locked down in southwest Ohio. They're in Pickens. Should get good again here in a couple days. Dustin said you missed the Tennessee report. Basically, there in Tennessee, what's happening is Kentucky's in just sharp lockdown, really entering that sharp lockdown period. Tennessee, for the northern third of the state, is pretty much in the same boat, but that southern half, southern 2/3 of Tennessee seems to be just a little bit behind as far as lockdown. Let's see here. Carson says that they're running pretty hard in Middle Georgia. Thank you. We'll be coming up in the with some Indiana information here in the Midwest Report, Dean. Keith, Western Kentucky, I think it's much the same as the rest of Kentucky, pretty much locked down. I think that pretty much covers most of our reports. There are, obviously some other reports that people have dropped in here. I don't see any questions, though. If I see any questions pop up, we'll definitely take time to answer those. We're going to swing over to the Midwest, see what Mr. Ridenauer has to say. Hopefully we can get him on.
Hey,
How you doing, Tyler?
good, man. How are you?
Still in Kansas?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'll be here for a few more days. So, yeah.
How's it going out there?
Not bad. It's as you've been talking about in Kentucky, most of the Midwest is in lockdown right now. Um, Worse in some areas than other. There's some places we're still seeing blurps activity, and some places where it's not really, really sharply locked down yet. Here in Kansas, I'd say probably around 50%, 50 to 60% probably have been bred or are locked down right now, but we are still seeing a pretty good number of does with fawns. So it's really just starting to really get into that lockdown phase out here. Still decent activity though. I mean, we've seen mature bucks on their feet every day. Um, some of them with those, and still seeing some bucks cruising. Some of those older, most dominant bucks they're gonna get those first does that come in when that big cycle happens. And some of those does have already been bred. I've watched a couple of does been bred while we've been out here, and they'll break away from them, and that's when you can capitalize on those older deer. Like you're saying, those younger bucks they're gonna start fizzling out. But those older age class deer, you're still going to have good activity. It can be tough at times. It can feel like the only thing in the woods is a button buck and a year and a half old. That's about all you'll see during lockdown, it seems. But if you get an old deer that breaks away from a doe once he breeds her, things can turn around, in the drop of a hat. So just got to be in the woods right now. That's the name of the game is time on stand.
Good deal. Absolutely. Tell us, what's your best advice before we jump into all the individual states and your sources, for that time of year, for when that's going on, you've already offered a little bit of advice there. What's your just hardest hitting, best advice, best tip for when that's occurring in a hunter's neck of the woods?
Yeah, I mean, right now, lockdown, we got a lot of gun season starting to open up in the Midwest this weekend and into the next week too. Makes it a little bit easier when you can spot a buck bedded with a doe to get into gun range than bow range. But it kind of depends where you're at. If you're out here I'm in the western half of Kansas, pretty open country. If you're in the western half of Nebraska, in that open country, when they're locked down with a doe, you can slip in on them sometimes. I mean, that buck, he's not going to move for anything as long as you don't bump that doe. It's worked for me in the past. You slip in with a buck decoy. You'll see it in this open country pretty regularly where you'll see a buck with a doe, got her pinned down, and there'll be 4 or 5 bucks standing around, and he's running one off and then running the other one off, and you can slip in with a buck decoy, especially if you're able to tote a firearm. I know Nebraska's getting ready to open up their firearm season, so open country, that's a tactic. We've got really cold weather, kind of the central part of the Midwest, central eastern, I guess, and northern part of the state of the region. Out here, it's warmed up a bit today, but if you're in, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, especially the northern halves of those states where it's been really cold, Wisconsin, Michigan, the does are hitting food sources. They have to. It's been so cold, and a lot of places have got 6-10 inches of snow. So high calorie food sources are going to be where the does are focused right now. And as with any time during the rut, where the does are is where the bucks are going to be. So high calorie food sources, corn, beans, and transition zones between the two, if you're in that type of an environment. So those are the things I would key in on, and then just lockdown in general, thick bedding areas, thick cover, little hidey holes where you wouldn't expect a deer to be, where a big mature buck's going to drive a doe, where he's not going to get harassed, especially if you've got a place with good age structure, where they could very well get that doe taken from them if they're not careful and hide out. So yeah, if you've got some really, really thick cover, nasty swamp type stuff or thick brush where a buck may drive a doe, those are good places to key on as well.
How long do you think it'll be before these bucks start to break loose there in the Midwest and people start to see some decent cruising action again?
Like Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, I would expect they're going to start breaking off in the next 24 to 48 hours. It's most of them have been locked down from what I'm hearing. At least the last day, 2 days. And like I said, there's still blurps of activity here and there, but most of those areas I would expect that in the next couple of days, it's to see those older age class bucks to break off and start cruising again. We're seeing it out here already. Like I said, some of those truly dominant bucks have already bred those first does they grabbed. They're cruising again. we've been able to monitor some of these deer just with cameras at night and then seeing them during the day, and you can tell when they're with a doe, when they're not with a doe. One buck in particular, he had a doe a couple days ago, bred her, caught him cruising the next morning. That night he was with a doe, and then the next morning he either got her taken away or he took care of business. He was cruising again, picked up another doe. So it just depends on the individual deer, the buck, as far as how dominant he is, and the doe, when she's going to come in. Does he pick her up right before, or is he going to bed with her for 3 days? So really the name of the game is just being on stand. You got to spend time in the woods, and it can be tough during lockdown. This is the true grind of the whitetail rut, is sitting all day when you may only see a 1.5-year-old buck and a button buck all day. It can drive you stir crazy. So
that was pretty much me. I hunted until mid morning this morning, saw just yearling bucks and mostly fawns this morning. Saw a couple of adult does, and this afternoon didn't see a single doe, and saw a couple of 2.5-year-old bucks, and that was it. So it's that time of year. I think we've pretty much been in that lockdown since about Monday. I haven't seen anything really mature since the weekend. Haven't seen any good cruising, chasing activity. So I think we've been basically in that lockdown phase for the last day and a half to 2 days for sure. Maybe a touch longer, but yeah, it's different for every area. Kentucky is much the same as most of the Midwest there. I think it happens just a little sooner here maybe than it does some other states there in the Midwest.
yeah.
But yeah, solid information. What are some of your sources telling you?
I talked to Mike Stroff with Savage Outdoors, and he's been in Illinois for the last week. Said it was on fire down there last week. They killed their biggest buck they've ever killed off the farm he was hunting last week, and solid lockdown right now. He said it's full blown lockdown, but they have had that cold weather down there, so take advantage of that. Those does are going to key in on food sources like we talked about. So. Also talked to Melvin Oldiker with Oldiker Outfitters. He's up in northwestern Nebraska, and that's one place where they haven't quite locked down yet. It's going pretty much full blast right now, and I'm not sure on the exact day, but I think it's in the next couple of days here. Nebraska's firearm season opens, so those guys should have some pretty good activity hunting that firearm opener. And he said it's full chasing hard right now. Bucks cruising, mature bucks cruising, and we would expect that lockdown to hit up there, almost any time now with that spike in activity that they're seeing. So if you're in Nebraska right now, I would be in a tree. It sounds like that's probably one of the hottest spots as far as the whole state, or at least the western half of Nebraska goes right now. Also talked to my buddy Steve Gillickson. He's up in central Wisconsin, and same deal. They're locked down there. They are still seeing some cruising and a little bit of chasing happening there. So it's, it could be those older mature bucks that have already maybe bred a doe. They grabbed one of them first hot does and they're starting to cruise again. But more or less locked down by and large up there. And then my home state of Michigan, I talked to some friends back home. Pretty similar reports to what we're getting from Steve there in Wisconsin. Still a little bit of cruising, pretty much only older deer they're seeing cruising right now. Just a handful of activity here and there, but for the most part locked down. And with the snow and cold weather that we've had back there, like I said, the does are focused on food. So if you've got cut corn or standing corn, I know there's still quite a bit of standing corn in Michigan, more than typical for this time of year. It can be tough to hunt, but it's definitely going to be a draw. And then anywhere you've got beans, especially standing beans, those are going to be a super hot ticket right now.
For sure. Is there anything else that you can share with us from the Midwest this week?
I think that covers most of it. Just spending time on stand. I mean, that's name of the game. We got, realistically, we got another week of good activity, and then, things are going to peter out pretty much. There's always a chance post rut, but we got about a week left of really good activity here, especially with mature deer like we've talked about. They're the bucks that are going to continue to be active after that first phase of does have bred. So in certain areas of the country, you still got a little bit better hunting, I think, than others left to be had. But yeah, just got to spend time on stand right now.
Absolutely. Solid advice, great information. Have y'all knocked any more deer down since yours last
Yeah,
Wednesday?
yeah. My buddy Adam killed a nice 4.5-year-old buck on Sunday night, I believe. So, yeah, we're doing
Good deal.
okay. We've had a few mishaps with shooting skills. Some of the guys in the group. Uh, there's been opportunities to be had. We'll say that. And the deer have been moving pretty good down here, so it's been a good trip. So can't complain.
Is the weather going to continue to be good for the next week or so?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a warm up here in Western Kansas, but it's nothing crazy. I mean, it was 3 degrees yesterday morning, so anything's a warm up from that. Midwest as a whole,
Right.
that crazy, crazy cold weather we're not going to have, but it's solid deer hunting weather. Just kind of average temperatures. It's going to be good the next week. No crazy warm ups that I've seen forecasted for anybody, so it should be a really good week for sure.
Good deal. Well, thanks for all the solid information, Tyler. Good luck to the rest of your crew there. Hope you guys all get field tags, and we'll check back in with you next Wednesday night. Hopefully, they're still cruising and acting
Yeah,
silly.
let's hope, man. Good luck to you too. Yeah,
Thank you.
bye bye.
All right, great, solid information from our man there. We're going to try to get our main man, Mr. Bone Collector himself, Nick Munt. He's going to be jumping on here. Hopefully, we've been having some technical issues. Hopefully, he is able to join. In the meantime, I'm going to jump over and basically just jump into the comments like we always do. So I'm going to dive into the comments section, see if we have any questions or concerns, and hopefully we have nothing but good reports and rut reports for you guys. Rick, he just talked about Eastern Ohio. Basically, there's some lockdown going on there, some decent chasing and basically some good chasing activity going on, but there is some lockdown occurring there in Ohio, Rick. Let's see here. Art says not much going on there in Chester County, PA. Aren't seeing much action now. A lot of deer movement, but not as much as there was. Thank you for that, Mr. Lyle. Let's see if we got any other questions. Trevor, we just talked about Kentucky. We're basically in that lockdown phase. Definitely in the lockdown phase here in Kentucky. Let's see if we got any other questions. Sean says he went in to check trail cameras this morning after he got off work and basically got run over by a doe that was being chased by a buck. Solid information. Drop a comment there, Sean, and let us know what state, what area you're in, and maybe it'll help somebody out. Let's see here. All right, I do know we're going to be getting Mike Stroff on here and here soon. He's going to be coming on as well. Sometime around 8 o'clock. In the meantime, we may have to jump on over to our Northwest reporter, Mr. Patrick Mayteen, because I know Nick is with us. He's on the report. He's dropping comments in the comments section, but for some reason I can't add him to the live feed. I'm not sure why that is, but I can't send him an invitation to join us right now. I am going to jump on over to the Northwest report. Mr. Patrick Mayteen himself, our resident mountain man. He's going to tell us what's happening up there in the high country. How you doing, Patrick?
Good. Tired.
Good deal. What's going on up there?
Tragedy this morning. I saw a wolf and didn't have a gun, so.
Well, tell us about it. What happened?
All right, we're back.
We've got you back.
Yeah, anyway, saw a wolf this morning and no gun in sight, so it was quite the tragedy.
Well, tell us what's going on with the deer. What are the whitetails?
So, Washington, talked to Dale Denny from Bear Pie Outfitters, and he's down in the southern part of the state hunting mule deer, but he's communicating with his guides up there in northeast Washington, around Colville. The guides are seeing bucks are chasing certain does, not all does. They're chasing certain does, but no one has seen any breeding yet. So, his opinion, having lived there his whole life, he just says the bucks are always ready way before the does. The does are still reluctant right now, but definitely a lot of increased daytime movement there. So this weekend should be prime. Both seasons are opening, and a lot of those units this weekend are open right now. So you have Washington to tag. This weekend be a good weekend to be on stand for sure. Really, same story in Idaho. The trail cam activity has picked up tremendously. I mean, hundreds of photos a week instead of dozens. So seeing a lot of dead deer on the road. It's quite a few. I mean, just this week, I quadrupled the number of deer hit on the side of the road. It's I mentioned last week, most of the mature bucks that I was seeing on camera were showing up in the PM for some reason. This week, that's pretty even mix. They're showing up in morning and evening. So that to me kind of tells me that things are shaking loose a little more. Had one camera. This time of year, I try to keep most of my cameras on video, just to get a little more insight into what's going on. Did see some bucks, nosing at does. Does seemed very reluctant. But what I found very interesting, one of my major signboard scrapes that's there every year, the camera that was on that scrape, I had everything from spikes and forkhorns to mature does to mature bucks, all using that scrape. So they're all starting to communicate with one another, which again tells me things are about to kick off. Food out here really still the big draw. Look for those concentrations of does, and right now that's been apples for me here in Idaho. We had record low temperatures in October. Kind of a weird thing. I've never have seen this before. The apples didn't really drop. It's like they froze in place, and they're frozen and mushy, but the deer still like them. And this morning when I got out, it was very cold, but as it warmed up, the apples started dropping a little bit. And still the place to be. But again, this weekend should be prime. I'm seeing mature bucks in the daylight. I mean, on a regular basis, not just occasionally like last week. So this weekend is going to be rocking. And here until the end of the season, and some of these units are closing on the 20th. So here to the end is gonna be prime time. Other units will stay open until the end of the month. You'll have a little bit more time. I'm moving over to Montana. Talk to see if I can say this correctly. Keith Dvorak. He's got ripcord arrow rest. He's over in Dillon in western Montana. He said he's been observing some really hardcore fights. They're not. He doesn't seem to be seeing as much chasing as that kind of fighting would indicate, but they're definitely fighting hard. They're sorting out those pecking orders, hitting the scrapes and the ribs pretty hard. Just kind of a late bit of information I got just before we went on. My buddy Chris Madsen, he's mostly a fishing guide, but he's a hardcore bow hunter as well. He guides on the Bighorn River, but he lives in north central Wyoming and guides up in south central Montana, but been doing a lot of driving back and forth with clients and back and forth from home. He's seeing a lot of bucks chasing. He's even seeing what he calls some of the big boys are out in the daylight. So, good sign there. And again, Montana this weekend, good time to be on stand. Or just out glassing if you're out in the prairie stuff. Wyoming, talking to Dustin DeCrew, Bighorn Outfitters, said things are really starting to break loose there. Seeing a lot of movement. They've had some really cold weather as well, which he says is really helping their cause. They've killed several big bucks during the week, big burly mature bucks. Lots of buck movement in the daylight. Lots of new arrivals. and the scrapes and rubs are expanding, and he says this weekend should be wide open. So that's pretty much the story in the Northwest. Is this weekend is going to be, if not the best, one of the best, but I would call it the best. If you're not in a stand or out in the field this weekend, you're going to miss out on some of the best hunting of the season.
Good deal. Do you have any more information from the Northwest? Because we're going to jump over and have another guest before the Southwest report. Is there anything else you can share with us up there in the Northwest part of the country? Good deal. We'll bring you back on here in just a minute. All right. Let's see here. We're going to jump back into the comments section here. But I think, hopefully, we'll have Mr. Nick Munt here in just a moment. I think we've got some of our technical issues that we had earlier worked out, and I think he is able to join. But we'll know for sure here in just a minute. In the meantime, I am going to jump over into the comments section and see if we can answer anybody's questions. Let's see here. I think we pretty much got everybody's questions answered. While we're waiting to see if Nick is able to join, I am going to just go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about what's recapped so far. The Southeast, most of the Southeast is basically, it's right in the thick of it. Kentucky's kind of in lockdown. Tennessee, for the northern half of the state, northern third of the state, is in lockdown. Basically the middle half of Georgia is right there in the thick of it. Bucks breeding does, bucks chasing does. South Carolina has really kind of started to taper off a little bit, but there's still really good pockets of activity going on there as well. Florida, the eastern third of the Panhandle is where the best action is located, and in basically the central part of the peninsula has some pretty good stuff going on down there as well. The southwestern corner of Louisiana is rocking pretty strong. It's kind of starting to creep a little bit further northward there in Louisiana. Mississippi, no rut. Alabama, no rut. In North Carolina, it's really the central third of the state is where the best action is happening. And that's pretty much a wrap for the Southeast. Northeast, they're chasing pretty hard according to our sources, and Mr. Josh Montgomery, our Northeastern reporter, he says that they're chasing pretty hard, starting to enter that lockdown phase 2, but it seems to be just a tad behind the Midwest. And obviously Tyler, who we just had on a few minutes ago, he said that it's basically entering the lockdown for most Midwestern states as well. That said, that pretty much wraps everything up. I know in the Northwest, it's one of those deals where it's a little later, and we're going to be talking Southwest here in a minute or two, especially if we can't get Nick back on with us. It happens later up there in the Northwest, and Patrick has explained why that is. There's a really defined rut there in the Northwest, even more so than the Midwest, Northeast, and parts of the Southeast, because they have such inclement weather up there. They have to drop within a certain period of time or they won't survive. Fawns won't survive. So very good information that Mr. Patrick Mayteen shares with us each week. Solid info. The rut is less defined in certain other parts of the country because of the environmental factors. It's all driven by photo period. It's all driven by environmental factors, but it's just a little bit different everywhere you go. I think we are going to have to jump back to Mr. Mayteen because I'm not seeing anything pop up here, but hopefully we can get Mr. Mayteen back on with us here to give the Southwest report, and then hopefully we can get Nick Munt and as well as Mike Stroff on here as well. I'm not able to send Mike an invite either. We're going to get Mr. Patrick back on here though. Hopefully. Looks like our request timed out. Let's try again.
Okay.
We had to come back to you.
All right.
We had to come back to you because our. Yeah, no worries. We had to come back to you because we weren't able to get Mr. Nick Munn on there so far, and I've not been able to send an invitation to Mr. Stroff either. I'm
Okay,
not
here
sure
we are.
why I can't get. I'm not sure why I can't get invites out to those guys, but hopefully we can get this worked out while you're giving the Southwest report.
Yeah, I just got some weird messages I've never seen before. I had to reboot it real quick. That's why. So, Texas, West Texas. Talked to my good buddy Stephen Tisdale, who hunts out in Borden County, Crosby County, basically right off the edge of the Caprock, east of Lubbock, Texas, and the edge of the South Plains. He had a really good weekend. He went out Saturday, spent all day out in the field, rattled in 5 bucks, so that's still happening. He says he's still seeing a lot of does that have fawns or towing fawns, so things haven't, gotten to that critical point yet where, the lockdown that you guys are talking about. He said he saw a lot of bucks. That country's a lot more open than a lot of Texas. A lot of that Caprock country, you can get up on points and glass. And so he did a lot of glass, and he's seeing bucks, mature bucks that are swinging downwind, 190, 100 yards of doe groups, just kind of checking them and then heading out. But, they said they're still hitting the food really well. Obviously, the rattling is still working really well. Another interesting thing that he talked about, one of his buddies who hunts out there set off a scent bomb in the morning when he was sitting, and then went to check out some other spots after the feeder went off and didn't see anything. Came back about 11 to get back in the stand, and there was a big mature buck standing right over the scent bomb. So definitely looks like those bucks there in West Texas are hunting hard for that first estrus doe. Lots of movement and responding well to calls. Still hitting the food though. But he said, be on your toes, have your bow in your lap, because a lot of those bucks are not stopping and eating. They're just cruising right by, scent checking. Really, the only real slow spot I've heard is my buddy Ronnie Parsons, who hunts on the northern edge of the Edwards Plateau by San Angelo. He said the mature bucks have quit hitting feeders. He described it as they're hiding under rocks or something. He said they're just kind of disappeared. Hadn't seen any chasing yet, but definitely scrapes are appearing around the feeders. He expects things to blow up any day. All the signs are there. The necks are swelling, the younger bucks are keying up. But he put some cameras on some oak mott's. He thought that's maybe where all his mature bucks have disappeared to. So we'll know next week on that. Some new information I got. Made contact with Josh Kinzer. He's a PR guy from Big and J. They make mineral and feed and that sort of thing. He's got a couple different hunting spots. He's got a place north of San Antonio. I was kind of surprised. He said the rut kicked in down there about the 25th of October. So, he said they're still kind of trickling in and out there. That's kind of how things go in that hill country area. The long prolonged rut, but he was seeing some activity quite a while ago. He's got another place down in South Texas. He said the rut down there is obviously several weeks away, but he's hunted down there quite a bit. He has a lot of experience, and he says from his experience, like December 23rd to about the 5th of January is prime time down there. So good information there. Mark your calendar, because that guy does hunt down in South Texas a lot and kill some really nice bucks. So did get to heard from Mike Stroff very briefly. He said the deer are still hitting the food in Texas, but the weather's cooling down, causing some improved movement there. And so, this weekend could be pretty decent. He's in the southern part of the Edwards Plateau around Ozona, and he also has a place near Uvalde, which is kind of the northern part of South Texas proper. So still things are still a little bit slow, but it sounds like it's picked up from last week with the cool weather, the deer hitting the food again. News from East Texas, talked to Matt Future. He has Veterans Innovative Products, makes some cool broadheads. He's over by Fredericksburg, Texas, and he said the rut's still in full swing there, seeing deer chasing aggressively. And this weekend's supposed to cool off considerably. Big air mass moving down even into southern Texas, and he advises pack a lunch and stay all day. He says he thinks it's going to be a super weekend down in that part of the world. So, and like I said, the only low spot I'm really hearing in Texas is that San Angelo area from Ronnie. Other than that, it sounds like this weekend is going to be super. Although even there in San Angelo, he expects things to bust open. So this weekend should be good all the way around in all parts of Texas.
Good deal. Texas is such a big state, a massive state. It's almost multiple states. And that's something that we talk about each week, how varying and how different the rut is from South Texas to North to East to West. It's just a crazy state, and you can honestly chase the rut for a long time down there, just in that one little pocket of the country. Is that not right?
Oh, yeah. No, it's, North Tech or the Panhandle, way up in the far North Panhandle, the rut is probably the same as Colorado, and then you get all the way down into South Texas where you can hit some rut activity in January. So yeah, no, it's when I drive down there to go hunting, it's about a 30-hour drive, and a third of that is I'm in Texas. So it's a huge state. So moving over to Oklahoma,
Absolutely.
Talked to Eddie Claypool. Eddie Claypool's probably one of the most successful blue collar bow hunters around. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. He killed some big bucks. He always has. He's over in northeast Oklahoma. So the bucks are chasing really hard over there, but he's not seeing any breeding yet. He describes it as helter skelter. He thinks the local bucks that he's been watching all summer have disappeared. New bucks are appearing in their place. He says, you get in a stand this weekend, you just never know what's going to happen. Biggest buck of your life would come from 4 ranches over. And that that information kind of seconded by Joni Sandiford from the Croton Creek Ranch. Said they're definitely seeing bucks chasing over in western Oklahoma as well. Eddie said they're not seeing any monster bucks yet, but like I said, he expects this weekend to be extra good. Now over in Colorado, I got to talk to my buddy Danny Ferris. He's got the ultimate predator gear. They make those decoys that you attach to your bow, kind of a stalker decoy. But he saw 3 bucks chasing hard. He said they were kind of keyed 3 different bucks, 3 different does, but they kind of had picked out one doe out of the bunch and were really chousing those does hard. And he also had some pretty interesting experiences. He did some calling and decoying with his decoy, and had a couple 3.5, 4.5-year-old bucks approach very aggressively. I mean, he said he kind of started getting worried. They were getting kind of crazy. So it sounds like things are full tilt there. Fred Eichler from Full Dry Outfitters, he seconds all of his observations. He says full tilt. They're killing really good bucks right now, and that I said in Texas or in the Northwest is one of the best weekends. I'd say in Colorado, this is going to be the best weekend of the entire season, because they're going hard right now. I think it's going to continue through the weekend, and then they're probably going to go into lockdown by next week would be my prediction. We shall see. New Mexico and Arizona, they've got some rifle seasons going in both states. The rut's still weeks out in the mule deer and the coos deer both. You're going to find the mature bucks are still going to be in loose bachelor groups. The younger bucks are going to be hanging out with doe groups. But same advice that I gave last week, and is just find a vantage, plant your butt, and do some glassing. The deer are moving well. They're moving well in the daylight. They're just you're going to get some spurt of activity early in the morning when the first sun hits those ridges. You're going to have some up and down movement all through the day, and then evenings are going to be good again. It's been kind of warm down there, cooling off a tad, but still a little bit warm. So again, just sit in glass, trust in your scouting, and try to find those bucks that you scouted earlier in the season.
Absolutely. Solid advice. Great information. You know, and I know we were talking earlier about trying to get Nick Mutt and Mike Strumpf on. We've been able to get all of our resident reporters, you know, on the live feed tonight, and for some reason we've not been able to send invites, and they've not been able to request to join either. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not sure why we haven't been able to get Nick Mutt on or Mike. I know it's not, you know, they've definitely been with us. They've been answering questions in the comment section and communicating with everybody. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Hopefully we can get that worked out. And if we can't, maybe we can get it worked out and get those guys on in a future episode. I'm not sure what's preventing us from getting those guys on the live feed. But yeah, that's some great information, Patrick. Solid info. You know, what's your best advice for that Oklahoma deer hunter or Colorado deer hunter who's going to be out there hunting this weekend?
Well, I know I have quite a bit of experience in the eastern plains of Colorado. I used to hunt there a lot when I lived in New Mexico and could just run up in a day. This time of year when they're rutting this hard, the rattling, the gruntings, the calling, I refuse to sit in a stand when I hunted out in the eastern plains. It's pretty open. There are some thick creek beds and stuff like that, but it was so much fun to get out there and do that run and gun, calling and rattling and decoying. And, you know, that would be my advice too. Is some of these guys like in Western Kansas dealing with this lockdown, get out and do some spot and stalking. But Eastern Colorado, it's deadly effective. I mean, it's those bucks are real receptive to calls, and they're so visible. It seems impossible to stalk in that wide open country, but they're so visible. They put their heads down, you move. They lift their heads up, you stop, and it's you can do a lot with knee deep grass. Now Oklahoma, you know, a little more classic whitetail hunting out there. I would definitely be in a stand this weekend. I would take a pee bottle. I would take a lunch. I would take some fluids, and I would sit in a stand all day long this weekend. You know, take a book or take a spare battery for your cell phone so you can check your email or whatever. But it's going to be a good weekend to sit all day in Oklahoma for sure.
Good
Colorado too. If you got a good creek bed spot, I'd sit all day. You know.
All right, throwing a scenario at you. You've got, you know, we've been talking a lot of lockdown here in the last hour and 15 minutes. You know, it's not that way everywhere, but there's a lot of states, a lot of counties, a lot of farms where the lockdown is occurring right now. Say you've got a lockdown doe. She is pinned down. Buck's got her right there. She's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. What's your top tips on killing that big buck that's locked down with a white-tailed doe?
Tyler touched on this, but I am not afraid to climb out of my stand and stalk. I know that I've hunted places where people almost forbid you from getting out of your stand, but you know, I know when I was going to college in Texas and couldn't afford tree stands and feeders, that's all I did was still hunt, and I killed just as many deer as most people did. So you know, in that lockdown phase, I mean, if it's really gotten to the point where you just can't handle not seeing any deer, I mean, still hunting is always an option. Get the wind in your face, and just you're doing a lot more looking than you are walking. Take 3 or 4 steps, stop, glass. 3 or 4 steps, stop, glass. Get down on your knees and look under the brush. I mean, still hunting isn't just about walking through the woods quietly. You really need to you're stalking. You have to believe there's something there, and you're stalking it. So you know, take your time and do a lot more looking and listening than you do moving. And you know, Tyler again touched on that as well. You know, those lockdown bucks get kind of stupid. So as long as you don't bump that doe, that buck's not going anywhere. So I know a lot of guys, especially I've got one of my best friends that I hunt with quite a bit. He lives in southeastern Kansas, where it looks just like Missouri. I mean, it's oaks and ridges, it's woods. And that's all he does. He won't sit in a tree stand. He stalks, and he hunts with a recurve on top of it all. So stalking and still hunting is something that's always an option, and it's deadly effective. I think we've all kind of been brainwashed to stay in the stand at all costs. So if you're in that lockdown phase, that would be my advice, and that's what I would do. I would get out of my stand and go try to make something happen.
Are you a fan of keeping two-dimensional decoys like a Montana decoy in your pack? That way you can creep up on those deer if it's wide open and you cannot put a legit stalk on.
Well, like Eastern Colorado, we did a lot of that. I don't even remember who made them. Flambeau. They're not made anymore. They were like a trifold flat decoy, and they were a little bit of a pain to carry around, but we'd stock up on a buck. We ran out of cover, just got pinned down by some does, and just absolutely could not do anything else. Pop that decoy open and tip it up, and we got some pretty dramatic results occasionally. Bucks just come charging in full tilt, but it almost would have been better to have a recurve, because they come running in, you get kind of a glancing shot at 5 yards or something.
Right. Solid information. Is there anything else that you can share with us down there in the Southwest this week?
Southwest, just you need to put off whatever else is going on and go hunting. That's my advice. It's happening in most of the Southwest, except Arizona and New Mexico. It's rifle season, so you have no choice. But sit in glass there. The rest of the Southwest, get out and hunt. Get in a stand, get in a blind, go out and do some glassing.
Absolutely. Great information, as always, Mr. Mayteen. Thanks for your time. We will definitely check back in with you next Wednesday. I assume things are going to be rocking up there in the Northwest by this time next week. Hopefully.
Next week from here, well, some of these units are going to be closing on the 20th. From here to the end, like 10A around where I live will be closing on the 20th. If you have to take vacation time, take it now. I mean, it's the clock is ticking, and it's also happening out there. Other units stay open till the end of the month, but usually when I kind of look at my records, I've killed probably 80% of my biggest and maturest bucks here in this part of the world from like the 13th till the 20th. So definitely prime time up here. And like I said, these bucks are very spooky. They get hunted hard. They tend to be very nocturnal, and this is the week when they actually venture out into the daylight. So they need to take advantage of that.
For sure. Solid advice, solid information. Thanks for joining us as always, and we will check back in with you this time next week. We might be moving our reports, just to let everyone know, we might have to remove our reports to next Thursday night. Very well could be this time, the same time next week on Wednesday night at 7, but it could end up being moved to Thursday night at 7 Central Time. We'll let you know closer to time which day the report is going to be. We'll send out a notification, send out a post, and let everybody know for sure when we'll be having the report. But again, it'll either be Wednesday or Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Patrick, thanks again for joining us. Solid information, and we look forward to hearing from you next week.
Next week, hopefully I will be coming at you from Washington. So we'll see how that goes. Still kind of up in the air.
Good deal. Good luck to you in the woods this weekend. Be safe.
Yeah, you as well.
Hunt. Thank you. All right. So we did finally ended up getting a message from Mike. He actually was with us. So was Nick Munt. Not sure what happened. I apologize greatly to you guys. Apologize to them as well, because I just don't know why we weren't able to get them on. That's a tough break for you guys and for us. That was going to be a real treat getting to hear from them. Solid information and some entertainment too. I did realize, I think what happened with Mike, he has actually been on the road. He pulled over and sent me a message and basically told me that he's been on the road and he pulled over. So I think the reason we weren't able to get Mike on is just because he probably didn't have as good a cell signal. Sometimes we can't invite people on to these live feeds. They won't let us invite people on, it seems, if they don't have good enough service. So it could be the fact that he was on the road and just was not able to join there. I'm not sure what happened with Nick Mudd again. They were both with us. They were both trying. They didn't stand you up. We didn't stand you up. Sometimes we just have these issues. Facebook Live is a finicky animal, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we will definitely work to get those guys on here at a future date. I know Nick was jumping in the comments section like a madman, interacting with all of you guys. Definitely follow those two guys. You can follow Nick Munt. Obviously, he's with Bone Collector. You can check all of his content out. He has his own social media pages. Follow his season. He is a hoot to follow and to see what's happening in his neck of the woods. He's all over the place. Same with Mike Straw. You can follow him. He has his hunting shows. He's also on Realtree 365 with Grigsby. That's a new show on Realtree 365. You can also follow some of his stuff there on that show as well as Pay Dirt. But yeah, definitely follow Mike as well. He is a wealth of knowledge, great guy, incredible hunter. So you definitely want to follow him, and we will work to get him on at a future date as well, and we'll just work through these issues as we come to them. Hopefully you guys are looking forward to the weekend. It's going to be another good one. Not going to be as great a weather as we had as a whole for the nation the past 7 days, but the weekend's not going to be that bad for 99% of our deer hunters out there. It's going to be solid. We're going to have decent lows. A little bit higher highs than we'd like to see, but it's not going to be terrible. It's going to be pretty good. It's going to be solid conditions. Hopefully, with the exception of the Northwest, which is probably going to be in their lockdown phase by this time next week, maybe next weekend, the rest of the country, hopefully we're past that peak lockdown by the weekend, because we're kind of experiencing it now. We've been seeing some of it from, Monday all the way up till now. So hopefully by the weekend hunt gets here, hopefully the lockdown will be over with for most deer hunters out there, and you will be experiencing solid cruising activity again, once again, from your mature bucks that you've been following this season. So, that being said, again, definitely go check out Theissens' website. The link is in the description. They sponsor this thing. They make this thing possible. And again, it's about you guys. So we're just proud to be able to bring it to you. This is a big tailgate, a big party. We have fun with this. This is real time, as real as it gets. This isn't scripted. This is all live. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes things go really wrong. But hey, we have fun doing it, and we enjoy bringing this resource to you guys. This is a deer camp. It is a hunting campfire scenario type deal here. We just have fun, having fun with y'all. Keep dropping your own hunting reports and rut reports in the comment section. We call out as many of them as we have time to call out. Can't get to all of them. Drop your questions in the comment section as well, and we will answer as many of those as we can, as we've done tonight. So keep doing that. Keep following us. We're going to be here almost every time we come live to you. It's going to be on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're out there on the West Coast or in Mayteen country, it's going to be a little bit earlier in the day, maybe 5 or 6 o'clock, depending on the time zone. But most of the time, it's going to be at Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central. Again, next week could be moved to Thursday night, situation depending. But we'll let you know closer to time exactly when we're going to be coming live to you guys and sharing the next batch of Rut Report information. Also, as we noted at the beginning of the live feed, definitely check out the stuff that Thiessens has available to you. They are going to be coming on sale here soon. Remember, they are pricing their products affordably. They are basically making it to where you can afford those products year-round. It's great quality. I have their jacket on right now. I'm not just saying it. It's good stuff. Solid products, and they're affordable for the hunter out there like you and me. Well made and completely easy on the checkbook. So definitely check out that. You can go check out the link in the description. They are direct to consumer. You can only get it straight from them. All right, guys, that's pretty much concluding this week's report. We are looking forward to joining the camp, the hunting camp, because that's what it is, with you again next Wednesday night, potentially Thursday night, and we will have fun and bring you even more rut information come that time. Y'all stay safe in the deer woods this weekend. Have a safe hunt. Have a fun hunt. Get out there, enjoy deer hunting the way you do. You know, we all hunt for different reasons. We all enjoy hunting for different reasons. There's no wrong reason as long as you're legal and you're ethical. As long as you're legal and ethical, you hunt for you, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's all I got to say about that. So you guys have a fun hunt, have a safe hunt, and we'll check back in with you again next week.